You are listening to The Vocal Technologist. Spoken tech for your ears.
Imagine spending months perfecting your creative style. Like you pour your absolute soul into the details, refining every curve, every color, and every layout until it feels completely yours.
Right, making it something totally unique.
Yeah, exactly. Then you wake up one morning to find a machine has churned out 1,000 knockoffs in your name while you slept, which honestly is exactly as terrifying as it sounds.
It really is. The sheer scale of that automation is just, well, it is overwhelming.
It is a total nightmare. We are entering an era where making things takes zero time, and human judgment is rapidly becoming our only currency.
And it is forcing this massive identity crisis across every creative industry. We are seeing a fundamental rethinking of what it actually means to be a creator.
Straight up. Well, I am your resident vocal technologist, your tech-savvy Australian mate here to translate the complex stuff into plain English, hopefully without being condescending. Our mission is to unpack this massive collision between traditional design and artificial intelligence.
And there is heaps of material to get into.
Oh, an absolute mountain. We are exploring what happens when the friction of creation drops to zero.
And my role is to bring a synthesizing perspective, to look at these massive shifts and connect the dots across different fields, because the changes we're looking at are not happening in isolation.
Right, they're bleeding into everything.
Exactly. They're fundamentally altering how humans interact with technology, and more importantly, how we trust it.
So we are going to look under the hood of how the traditional step-by-step design process is basically dying, and why, believe it or not, deliberately making apps harder to use might actually be the secret ingredient to saving them.
Which sounds completely counterintuitive.
It does. But let us start with a problem that is quietly breaking the internet right now. Trust. Or rather, the complete lack of it. There is this quiet erosion of user confidence happening across all digital platforms.
Yeah, we are transitioning from an era obsessed with usability to one where user trust is the primary metric. Usability alone is just, it is no longer enough.
Because an app can function perfectly.
Right? Exactly. The buttons can be in the exact right place, but if the user feels manipulated or suspects they are reading generated filler, the design has failed entirely.
You look at what Meta is doing. They have been caught secretly building an artificial intelligence detector tool.
Which is quite a pivot.
It is honestly hilarious to me. And then you have got Spotify testing a feature called Artist Profile Protection. This lets musicians vet tracks that get wrongly attributed to them because of malicious metadata. But going back to Meta, them building a detector for their own mess.
It is a bit ironic.
It is like a bloke bringing a plague of cane toads to the farm to eat the beetles and then trying to sell you a toad catching stick. They literally unleashed this avalanche of artificial slop, and now they want to be the ones to charge us for the shovel.
Oh, that is a perfect way to put it. The irony of those corporate moves is hard to ignore. But if you look past the maneuvering, it highlights a broader crisis. Users are developing really sophisticated defense mechanisms.
Like what kind of mechanisms?
Well, they're showing very subtle behaviors that indicate this lack of trust. They hover their mouse, they hesitate before clicking.
I do that all the time now.
Right. Or they reread generic text twice because they can sense when something lacks genuine human intent. They are constantly waiting for the catch.
So how do you even design for a user who is constantly suspicious? I do not know. Slap a giant warning label on everything that says machine generated and hope for the best.
Actually, maximum transparency is counterproductive.
Wait, really?
Yeah. Showing people the raw code or a giant warning label just causes anxiety. It leads to decision paralysis. What we need is called calibrated trust.
Calibrated trust.
Yes. Both total aversion to these tools and blind over-reliance are failure states. Users need to be able to verify the outputs themselves. You build this through design patterns like scoped prompting.
Scoped prompting. Let me guess how that works mechanically. Instead of just giving the user a blank text box where the machine can hallucinate absolutely anything.
Which is a recipe for disaster.
Right. You give the artificial intelligence a very strict set of boundaries, and you expose those boundaries to the user, so they know exactly where the answer came from.
That is the core mechanism, yes. It restricts the tool to a specific data set or visual library. The interface might explicitly say, I am only analyzing your financial records for the past 12 months to answer this question.
Oh, so it proves its work by showing the constraints.
Exactly. And you also offer manual overrides. You build trust, by respecting the user's intelligence, letting them grab the steering wheel whenever they feel uncomfortable.
It is almost like proving the system understands physical reality in every single interaction. Even something as simple as the animations on a phone plays into this.
How so?
Well, I notice Android is testing a subtle blur effect during app launches. The background softly defocuses as an app opens and sharpens when returning to the home screen. It sounds purely visual, but is actually about visual continuity.
Right, anchoring the experience.
Exactly. It reassures the user that the system is stable and understands physical space, like looking through a camera lens.
It is a nonverbal way of signaling competence. When the physics of a digital interface mimic the real world, the user subconsciously relaxes. It is a lightweight effect, but it significantly enhances the feeling of stability.
But hang on, if trust is already on shaky ground, what happens when the very tools we use to build the software start thinking for themselves?
That is the big question.
Because the artificial intelligence is no longer just generating text, right? It is generating the interface itself.
This is where we see the most dramatic shift in product development. Autonomous agents are completely altering the production cycle, and in the process, they are making traditional user experience design feel like a massive roadblock.
Which brings us to the artificial intelligence coworker. Adobe is rolling out Project Moonlight, putting automated assistants straight into Photoshop and Acrobat.
So you just type a plain text description.
The tool does the editing.
Yeah.
And Figma is launching Canvas agents that build directly from design systems. Plus, you have startups like Anima generating production-ready apps straight from a prompt.
It is moving incredibly fast.
It is wild. Lovert AI automated entire creative workflows and got 100,000 users from 70 countries in 5 days.
That rate of adoption is staggering because these tools eliminate the tedious execution phase. But in doing so, they fundamentally disrupt the established workflow.
The old way of doing things.
Right. For years, product design followed a strict step-by-step methodology. You research, wireframe, prototype, hand off to front-end developers. That rigid, linear process is effectively dead.
So if the machine can just build the app from a prompt, does that mean the user experience designer is just hanging out making coffee? Because I have noticed user experience is increasingly viewed by developers as overhead rather than a value driver.
It is not about making coffee, but it is a massive psychological shift. It is the transition from being an operator to a decision maker.
Operator to decision maker. Unpack that a bit.
Think about a user experience designer staring at a screen. In the past, they were meticulously drawing boxes, calculating padding, setting up drop-down menus. They were the operator of the machine.
Yeah, pushing the pixels around.
Now they type a prompt, and the machine spits out 5 fully functioning interface variations in 10 seconds. The designer is no longer pushing pixels, they are curating hallucinations.
Curating hallucinations. I love that phrasing.
They are looking at the output and deciding which version actually solves the human problem. When you are no longer the operator drawing the boxes, your value comes entirely from evaluating the interaction patterns.
Because the user goes from clicking buttons to curating suggestions.
Exactly. And this shift requires a completely different architectural foundation beneath the software.
Which brings me to Figma completely rebuilding their instance update architecture. We built a system called Materializer just to handle this massive influx of automated design generation.
It was a necessary technical overhaul.
The technical explanation in the reading is that they separated layout, variable evaluation, and instance resolution. Put that in plain English for me. Does that mean they essentially uncoupled the steering wheel from the engine so the software does not lock up when the artificial intelligence tries to change the tires while the car is moving?
The steering wheel analogy captures the underlying problem perfectly. In a traditional design file, if you change a core visual component, the system has to recalculate everything sequentially.
Right, one thing after another.
But with autonomous agents generating and altering massive amounts of data in real time, a sequential process would freeze the software entirely.
It would just crash.
Exactly. By separating those functions, Materializer allows the visual layout to update independently of the underlying logic rules. It gets incredibly complex under the hood just to maintain the illusion of seamless speed on the surface.
So the software is doing all the heavy lifting. I mean, tools like OMA are orchestrating multiple agents to write code and build three-dimensional models in parallel.
The speed of execution is nearly instant.
Right. So if time is no longer a bottleneck and the machine can execute anything instantly, what exactly is the human supposed to be doing?
And here's where it gets properly weird. This specific question is causing a profound identity crisis across the creative industry. We are seeing the rise of a new loosely defined job title called the design engineer.
The design engineer.
Yes. This role sits right between user experience design and front-end development, owning the full process from idea to shipped product. Because the execution is automated, one person can command the entire workflow.
Which sounds incredibly empowering for some, but absolutely terrifying for others. There's a concept we need to pull apart called the 3/3.
Ah, yes, the mid-career identity crisis.
Designers are feeling pulled away from the hands-on creative work they actually love doing. The industry is essentially splitting into 3 groups. You have the first third who are thriving, riding the wave of these new tools, and becoming these omnipotent design engineers.
They are adapting well.
Yeah. But then you have the bottom third actively struggling to adapt. And then you have this massive middle third, people who are just coasting, feeling a deep existential dread, totally uncertain of what their job even looks like anymore.
The emotional toll in that middle third is immense. When you have spent a decade mastering the difficult craft of making things, and suddenly a machine can execute that craft in seconds, you lose your professional anchor.
Everything you built your career on is just done by a machine.
The traditional markers of seniority and skill vanish overnight. When the technical implementation is handled by a machine, human taste becomes the absolute premium. It is argued that judgment and creativity are the only differentiators left to justify a salary.
Okay, I have to push back hard on this idea that having good taste is going to magically save everyone's career.
How do you mean?
Is taste just a fancy word for guessing what the boss wants? Because let us be real, modern product design is heavily shaped by stakeholder expectations and market conformity.
That is certainly a pressure designer's face.
It feels like being a master chef where you can cook absolutely anything instantly, but the restaurant owner only wants you to make beige potato salad because it is safe, it offends no one, and it plays well in global markets.
I see the tension you are describing, and it is very real. But I will not concede that taste is purely corporate compromise. If a designer simply surrenders to making beige potato salad, they will be automated out of a job entirely.
Because the machine can make the potato salad too.
Exactly. The machine excels at creating the frictionless average. It can generate safe, inoffensive designs infinitely. The only way a product survives the incoming sea of machine-generated sameness is if the human designer actively forces a distinct perspective.
So you're saying the designer has to actively fight the boss to keep their job relevant?
They have to advocate for the user and for authenticity. True innovation requires bold, distinctive choices that challenge the norms. The designer's job is no longer just execution, it is persuasion.
That makes sense.
They have to learn how to quietly reintroduce their authentic cultural taste into corporate projects, managing the organizational risk aversion while pushing for something that actually connects with a human being. If they just become order takers, the machine will take their place.
And we see what happens when companies surrender to the beige potato salad. They face huge backlash for these minimalist, soulless rebrands. Look at the esports team ninjas in pajamas.
That was a prime example.
They released a new logo that was so completely stripped of personality, so indistinguishable from a generic corporate icon, that it became a massive joke among their fans. It was the pure result of the fear of making a bold choice.
If you remove all the distinctive flavor to appease a global market, you end up with a product nobody loves. Which brings us to a critical philosophy for navigating this new era.
Which is?
If we are fighting the frictionless average, we have to rethink how we design for real, messy humans.
Right, because we have spent the last 10 years trying to make everything one click. The entire goal of the tech industry was to remove every single barrier.
Maximum efficiency.
Yeah. And now the philosophy is flipping entirely. There is this concept of the existential designer drawing on thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre and Albert Camus.
Bringing philosophy into user interfaces.
Exactly. The argument is that overly optimized, frictionless systems actually undermine human agency. So we need to add friction back in. Wait, we've spent 10 years trying to make everything one click, and now we are saying we need to add friction back in. Because apparently that is where we are now.
It sounds counterintuitive to everything taught in basic design courses, but when you remove all friction, you turn the user into a passive recipient. They are just sliding down a predefined funnel without thinking.
Like doom scrolling.
Yes. Authentic engagement requires meaningful choice, visible alternatives, and a sense of responsibility. Meaning emerges through the user's choices and context. It is about meaningful friction, not broken interfaces.
Wait, let us break down what meaningful friction actually looks like in practice. It ties directly into Jacob Nielsen's argument that designing for the average user is a massive mistake.
He makes a very compelling point there.
He points out that digital behavior follows skewed distributions, not normal bell curves. You have the median users, the casual tourists who barely engage, and then you have the high-end users, the absolute whales who generate all the business value.
And if you aim for the middle,
If you design for the exact middle, the phantom average user, you build a product that is watered down for the power users and overcomplicated for the beginners.
let us look at a physical example of ignoring the user's physical reality in favor of a clean, frictionless look. The smartphone back button.
Oh, the ultimate ergonomic disaster.
Placing the back action in the top corner of a large screen completely ignores Fitts' law.
Fitts law, right.
It is a fundamental principle of human-computer interaction. It states that the time required to rapidly move to a target area is a mathematical function of the ratio between the distance to the target and the width of the target.
Meaning, if I am holding a massive phone with one hand, my thumb cannot physically reach the tiny back button in the top left corner without me shifting my entire grip and risking dropping the phone on the pavement.
Exactly. The physical constraint makes it a terrible user experience. It persists because of design inertia and a desire for a clean visual layout. Major hardware companies have all prioritized a frictionless visual aesthetic over the messy physical reality of how a human hand actually operates.
But then you look at Apple doing something incredibly smart with the MacBook Neo. This is a masterclass in making deliberate trade-offs and introducing meaningful friction.
They did not try to make a machine for everyone.
No, they targeted the extreme end of the spectrum specifically, newcomers to the Mac ecosystem. To hit an accessible price point, they deliberately removed features like the backlit keyboard and MagSafe.
Now, why is removing a backlit keyboard considered meaningful friction? Because it sets clear expectations about the machine's purpose. It prevents decision paralysis for a newcomer who might otherwise be overwhelmed by a massive spec sheet.
It forces a different type of engagement.
Yes. They maintained the premium aluminum construction to signal quality, but made a clear, opinionated choice. They respected the user's journey by saying, this is exactly what you need to start and nothing more.
It is about knowing your audience. And this concept of guiding the user through an experience brings us to a wild comparison we pulled from the material between anime and Marvel movies.
It perfectly illustrates how to manage emotional flow and user agency.
Right, because Marvel films often introduce competing emotional signals simultaneously. You will have a highly dramatic life or death moment that is immediately undercut by a sarcastic self-referential joke.
Which disrupts the intended feeling.
It causes total cognitive overload. You do not know if you're supposed to be grieving for a character or laughing at a punchline.
It leaves the audience detached. Anime, conversely, successfully manages massive emotional shifts, moving from intense horror to quiet tenderness by maintaining a strict continuity of stakes.
They provide clear mood cues.
Yes. They maintain a continuity of stakes to guide user emotion. Now, the translation to digital interfaces relies on that exact principle.
I'm guessing it means you have to build an interface that scales its visual weight alongside the user's emotional state.
Precisely.
If I am transferring $10,000 on a banking app, that is a high-stakes moment. I am naturally anxious. If the app uses a frictionless one-tap swipe and a playful pop-up animation with confetti, it undercuts the gravity of my action. I am left wondering if it actually worked or if it was too easy to just accidentally send my life savings away.
And that destroys trust. For a high-stakes action, you deliberately introduce heavy friction. You add a progress bar that forces them to pause. You require a secondary confirmation screen. You mirror the gravity of their choice in the interface.
Good design does not just sweep the user along effortlessly.
No, it gives them a sense of agency and choice rather than just forcing them down a slippery funnel. It respects the stakes of the interaction.
It is about treating the user with respect. Whether it is adding friction so they can make a conscious choice or pacing the emotional beats so they do not feel overwhelmed. It reminds me of the Mozilla Firefox team redesigning their accessibility approach.
That was a significant shift in their process.
They realized that treating accessibility as a compliance checklist at the very end of the process was a total failure.
So they started working directly with people using magnification software and voice control right from the beginning of the planning phase.
Yeah. They shifted accessibility from an afterthought to a fundamental design mindset. By understanding the extreme edges of human experience, they built something vastly superior to a product aimed at the non-existent average.
Because when you design for the extremes, you end up building something incredibly robust for everyone else. Look at augmented reality glasses.
Right, spatial computing.
The material points out that tools like speech-to-text and Be My Eyes are great, but the real potential of spatial computing is universal, multisensory design, using vision, sound, and touch all together.
If you build it to be inclusive from day one, the entire experience becomes more intuitive for every single user, regardless of their ability.
This ties back to the massive failure of the metaverse. Meta spent a fortune building escapist virtual realities that nobody wanted because they ignored physical human context.
But spatial design itself did not die.
No, it shifted toward enhancing physical reality rather than replacing it. It is about designing lightweight experiences that assist you in the messy, real world.
Let us bring this all together. We have covered a massive amount of ground today. In this session. We started with the avalanche of fake machine-generated content and how it is forcing us to completely rethink user trust through concepts like scope prompting.
And then we unpacked the reality of the artificial intelligence coworker.
That terrifying, brilliant moment where the user experience designer shifts from being an operator pushing pixels to a decision-maker curating outputs.
We explored the existential crisis of the modern designer, too, the immense pressure to conform to safe, beige aesthetics, and why human taste and the willingness to fight for bold choices are the only things that will survive automation.
And finally, we pulled apart the counterintuitive truth that making things slightly harder, adding meaningful friction and designing for the extremes, is how you build products people actually care about.
It all connects back to human intent.
The overarching theme here is the undeniable shift from making things to making decisions. The tools will handle the execution. The code will write itself. The pixels will arrange themselves perfectly. Our entire value lies in handling the intent.
We have to be the ones who care about the outcome.
So I want to leave you with a final thought to chew on. Something to roll around in your head the next time you open up your design software or evaluate a prototype. If a machine could perfectly replicate your flawless design taste tomorrow, what is the one uniquely human, wonderfully messy trait you would build into your product to prove you actually made it? Think about it. I am your vocal technologist, reminding you to keep questioning the technology you use every single day.
Spoken Tech for your ears.